Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another edition of the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Got a nice treat for you tonight, at least we think so, so let us think so. It is a radio roundtable coming up. John DeShazier, Todd Graffagnini, the gentlemen that call the games, color analyst and voice of the Pelicans, will give their thoughts. Jim is going to pepper them with a bunch of mid-season observations, hot takes, things of that nature, kind of a look back at the first 41 games of the season, even though now we have played 42. We'll get to that in a quick second. So that's coming up. And then, as I mentioned, I wanted Jim to have more work. So Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com. I said, come up with something on Fridays. And what are we going to do later on? We're going to do the trending number that is going to appear every Friday. Every Friday. Yes. I love when I get to give you more work. That's always. Look, we got a lot to get into, though, but I know you were excited about this, and it is going to be interesting to kind of hear, because, again, obviously, they're calling the games, they're watching it, you're writing about it, you're doing all those different aspects of it with 41 games in, and we did kind of touch on it a little bit on Wednesday. So game 42 was Wednesday night, and it was a historic game 42, as it was a franchise record 25 three-pointers. Everything seemed to be working on the offensive end. But again, it was almost like a snapshot of some of the things that we liked so far this season, isn't it? When you look back at that win against Charlotte.
It was just a lot of fun. I mean, to me, that was one of the most fun wins of the season, especially when, like you said, you set a franchise record with the 25 three-pointers made. Zion had tied his career high with 9 assists. B.I. had 7 3-pointers. You saw Jordan Hawkins once again. Doesn't need much time. Just throw him the ball. He'll catch it somewhere. He doesn't even really need to look at the rim. He'll put it up and have it go in. So another example to me too of, we've talked about how much talent this team has, but when you see it come together in that fashion, where you have over 23 pointers made, you have them score 130 points, and you see the development of a rookie halfway through his first season, you already can see what he's capable of. It makes you really excited to say, this team has so much potential. It's not like we didn't know that, but for me, I keep using the word fun. It was a lot of fun just to see that unfold the way it did during the game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think one of the other things that you see there as well is you're starting to see the potential, perhaps. It's interesting because we saw after the game that practice the next day on Thursday, and Matt Ryan's getting closer and closer. I don't say you forgot about it, but you want to talk about somebody that had one of those immediate early impacts and needed impacts in the season, because at the time that he came aboard and it was needed, because you almost forget this team had early injuries. C.J. McCollum missed some time, and obviously he's shooting the best of I don't want to say his career, but it may be. I mean,
I think it is a career high.
Yeah, people are saying that. So that's the point, though. Like, this team needed Matt Ryan and those threes and those things to come in there as well. And I don't know if I like to. I don't know if it's a video game mindset, but I'm just sitting here imagining the perimeter just stock full of shooters, on the outside. And there was Matt, and there was Trey, and there's Jordan, and there's whoever else that wants. Because, man, that really does make it difficult as to who you guard.
How about the fact, too, that Matt Ryan, I looked this up the other day because I remember when he spoke about how he might be returning, I was like, he was off to a really good start for the three-point arc. How about the fact that he's leading the team in three-point percentage over the course of the season? He's shooting 47% from three. So, I mean, there's a bunch of guys that have shot over 40% this season, including a couple guys that have been near that mark that have been surprising, like Najee Marshall. But Matt Ryan, like you said, adds another guy to the stable of three-point shooters that you can use. I don't know how the coaching staff is going to figure out how to play all these guys. Jose Alvarado wasn't in the top 10 in the game on Wednesday, and obviously Matt Ryan wasn't available. So, I mean, we've talked about in the past a team that has 12, 13 guys that can contribute, but now it's legitimately true. It's not like we said it, and then a couple months in the season, you're like, yeah, Jim, sure, they have 12 or 13 guys.
Yeah.
They legitimately do now.
Well, look, you legitimately, I mean, you need guys that can shoot threes. And when you look around the league, there's no coincidence. The Dallas Mavericks didn't end the Pels road trip well because they knocked down threes. The very next game, they go to the Lakers, and the Graph is still bitter about it. Tim Hardaway Jr., 0 for 7 from distance. Kyrie Irving was 1 of 5. But, I mean, it's a difference, and they lost at L.A. So just knowing you have that, and I look at it, Jim, too, how much pressure does that put on opposing teams moving forward? How do I use them? I have a suggestion for Coach. In that second to third quarter, when you're getting your starters a little rest, or even in that that first half, when people go out towards the end of the first and in the middle of the second, imagine if you can come off the bench with guys like Trey and Matt and Jordan, 3 guys at the same time on the court that if they each hit a 3, that's 9 points right there. That can sway a game, that can extend the lead, that can cut a deficit. And obviously, there's going to be more basketball we play. But the other thing that's interesting about all 3 of those guys, they rebound, they pass, they can hit different kind of mid-range jumpers and stuff. And that's the one thing I remember Matt Ryan when he was playing earlier this season. He has a very good basketball IQ.
Sure.
Jordan Hawkins showing that, he's called a hooper, right, for a reason. And Trey Murphy does all those things, attacks the paint. So you're not just getting 3 guys that are going to stand with their arms in the air saying, pass me the basketball, I'm going to shoot a standing 3. That's something that I'm going to try to kind of, let people see about that. I think that's what's different. This is just not a 3-point specialist. All these guys will do a lot of different things because that helps when I'm a coach. Well, if I put him on, I'm going to lose rebounding. I'm not going to get, passing. Right. You can do that with those 3 guys, and that just opens up the world of possibilities.
Yeah, and for Jordan in particular, too, I don't think he's been able to – he's shown it here and there, but because of his role where he is spotting up to shoot a lot, I don't think people realize how athletic he is and how he can get to the basket. I mean, he's had a couple dunks that make people raise their eyebrows and be like, wait a minute, I thought this guy was just a stand-still outside shooter. Right. No, this guy is athletic. He has many more dimensions to his game than just standing waiting for the ball to come to him and shooting, spotting up shots. So I agree. I mean, there's no such thing as having too much shooting in the NBA right now as far as the 3-point line goes. You mentioned, how Dallas fluctuated from game to game. I think that's another part of why it's important to have 5, 6, 7 guys that can be dangerous from the 3-point line, because on some nights 2 or 3 of your top guys are off or just having cold nights. So if you can bring in a couple other people that can replace some of that 3-point shooting or make up for it, I think that is extremely important in the NBA. You definitely don't want to be caught short in the 2024 NBA with 1 or 2 guys, and if they're not hitting, you're in big trouble from the 3-point line.
All right. I didn't expect that we're going to be talking a lot about that, but it is something to kind of keep an eye on, because it is going to maybe perhaps make them a little more dangerous from a weapons arsenal standpoint. But the Pelicans enter tonight's game against the Suns 5.5 back of Minnesota in first place, currently alone in 5th. The Mavericks 6.5 back, so a full game on them. The 2 games back of the Clippers, who seem to be playing ridiculous basketball right now. Nuggets 6-4 in their last 10 in third. They're 2.5 back. The Thunder, seems like they've been sitting in second for a while, haven't they?
Sure.
With 2 games back. They're 6-4. T-Wolves 6-4. That's why it's so key. You can do that 7-3 stretch like the Pels are right now, or 8-2 stretch like the Clippers are. They're going to move up, Jim. And that's something to look at. I say all of that because the Kings are 7th and they're the Suns. 22-18. They've won 3 in a row, 7-3 in their last 10. I don't think coincidentally it's because Bradley Beal's back. He's healthy.
Right.
We haven't seen this incarnation of the Suns yet. This isn't last year's Suns game that felt like a playoff series. We had Chris Paul, Monty. This is not it. This is a completely different team. So I'm very curious as to how the Pels match up here. In theory, when I hear Durant, when I hear Booker, when I hear Beal, I feel offense. Is that what the Suns are about right now?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I mean, I think one of the things that they're trying to figure out too is their depth. And the Pelicans have a big 3 that people consider to be very potent as well. But I think one of the differences between these 2 teams in the first 40-plus games of the season is just that the Pelicans have more guys that they can rely on. So I think that's going to be something to watch in tonight's game. Is the top 3 scorers for both of these teams are somewhat of a given of, they're going to put up certain numbers and you expect them to do certain things. But can the Suns start to develop some of their guys that are further down the roster, their bench? Grayson Allen's actually had a really good start to the season and one of the best three-point shooters in the league percentage-wise. But besides him, it doesn't seem like they have a ton of people that they can rely on for offense. So, by the way, Gus, too, we're going to be getting into hot takes with the radio guys later in the show. I have a little bit of a hot take here at the start of the show, and that is I think you can make a case, and I tweeted this already today, that this is the biggest home game of the season so far for the Pelicans, just based on they're only 2 games ahead of Phoenix. Mm-hmm. I think the Suns are definitely a team that has their eyes on. We believe we are definitely a top 6 team, so one of those squads I think that the New Orleans could potentially be vying with in the standings. So I think this is a really important game. I think it's going to be packed tonight in the Smoothie King Center too. We're at that stage of the season where I think people really have started to swing all of their attention or most of their attention to basketball. Mm-hmm. So looking forward to that. And also, by the way, too, it's also another game on Fox 8 in Gray TV. So, and it's King Cake Baby's season debut. So, I mean, you add all that stuff up together, and I think this is a big Friday night in New Orleans.
Do you have a personal photo with him? Just you and him?
I don't, mostly because I'm frightened and I'm afraid to get too close.
Like, that needs to happen. In this desk right here in this area, I have got to see just a glossy of you two. It needs to happen. I'm going to make sure.
We'll see what we can do about that. He's very busy at this time of year, but maybe after Mardi Gras, we'll see if we can put that together.
I'll tell you what. I don't know who's more excited, or people who see King Cake Baby, see this game, or try to get one of those hats that's going on today. It is whoever came up with it last year. I said at the time, is the most brilliant marketing thing ever because people wore it throughout the season. It's so unique. It's basically a pelican head.
Yep.
But this year, there's a Mardi Gras theme to it. So instead of the blue and red little feather thing kind of on the top, it's going to be Mardi Gras color. And we've already seen what it looks like. It looks fantastic. And a new court today. It is. I'm with you. It's kind of, this has a big game feel.
And, by the way, too, on the Pierre hat, I've noticed watching on TV or even, being in person that you can see Pelicans fans at road games. A lot of them wear those hats. Yeah. And it's kind of cool because it makes them stand out. It's so easy to see them in the crowd. So just kind of a nice little way to make your presence felt when you're at a road game, to say, yes, I'm here. I'm in my Pierre hat. Let's go Pelicans.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, you know what? It's time. I've talked a little bit too much already, but I can't wait to see this. John DeShazier, Todd Graffagnini. I normally say that when I say coming up next, Pelicans basketball, but coming up next is a radio roundtable, so let's do that now.
All right, guys, I'm looking forward to this. This is something that we're going to be doing every couple weeks on the Pelicans podcast, joining a couple members of the Pelicans radio team. We have Todd Graffagnini and John DeShazier here with me. Kind of halfway through the season, wanted to go through a few topics and discuss some of our thoughts, recapping the first 42 games of the regular season so far. So wanted to start with, I think, what might be kind of a fun category. What was the best win of the season? What was the best game that the Pelicans have played so far? I guess we can start with you, Graf.
Well, Jim, I've thought about this long and hard, and I can't really narrow it down to one. I got to give you 3. It's a 1A, 1B, and 1C. 1A is the win in Dallas on very recently, a week ago on Saturday. If you were not on that plane getting from Denver to Dallas, leaving at midnight, 1 o'clock Central Time, landing at 3, getting into the hotel 3:30, getting to the hotel at 4:30, walking across the tarmac in Denver at 3 degrees, -20 wind chill. You will never understand just the circumstances. And then, of course, then playing that day for the regular guys, 75 points basically out of your lineup, not playing, and then to beat Dallas in Dallas. Again, you had to be on the trip to fully grasp how big that win was. So I'll give that one. Going up to Minnesota and beating the Timberwolves by double digits on the second night of a back-to-back after beating Brooklyn here. Going up there, again, get in late, not 4:30 late, but still get in late, and then basically going wire to wire against the best team in the Western Conference on the road, where they've lost 2 games in that building all season long, and that was one of them. pretty impressive. And then the other one for me is the knockout round game in Sacramento against the Kings to get us to Las Vegas. It was just such an impressive victory. Beat the Kings again, who don't lose very often. Well, they didn't lose very often at home at that time. They're starting to slip a little bit, but just to be able to win and get to Vegas and have an opportunity to win the in-season tournament. So those are the top three for me.
So in that spirit, I'm going to give you 8. No, I'm just kidding. I just got one because Graf named some really good ones. But November 14th, home against Dallas, 131-110, Pels win. That was 2 days after Dallas smoked them. Same arena, and it just was. It broke a 5-game losing streak. Number one, but number two, I think it kind of told the Pels we can compete with the teams that are supposed to be the upper echelon teams in the Western Conference. I thought it was a great win to come back a couple of days later after getting run out of your own place, basically, because that 136 to 124 score was not indicative of how lopsided that game was. So they came back a couple of games later and then really laid the wood to Dallas and knocked them out. And so I thought that was really, really impressive early in the season, but I thought it was a pretty impressive win.
I like the fact that there's so many different ones to choose from, and we have quite a wide selection. I think that speaks to how successful the first half of the season has been for the Pelicans. I had 2 on my list. Graf, the only one that you guys mentioned was I also picked this game in Sacramento, which I was there for. I thought it was great to see the Pelicans perform in kind of a playoff type situation where you have to win to advance. So hopefully that's something that they can take into the April, making the playoffs and being able to win on the road. And then the second one, and you guys aren't going to be shocked at all when you hear this pick, December 31st, the Lakers. Just to watch. I mean, it was sweet revenge to get that win after what happened in Las Vegas, and also to be able to see Jose Alvarado just rip the ball away from LeBron a couple times, come from behind, steal the ball from him and Anthony Davis. That was one that I just had to put that on my list. So
the only thing that would have made it better for Jim is if somebody would have rolled an ankle or something. and really, objectively, look, the win in Dallas, that back-to-back from Denver and the no rest, and that really is, in my opinion, the most important. But I knew that was going to be somebody else's game, so I had to pick something else. But
Gotcha.
That was really probably the most impressive win, and it'll probably be the most impressive win of this season, even as we're 40 games away from the finish.
I can't believe you're accusing me of being happy with injuries, but that's okay. I'll let that sit for. We'll talk about that after the podcast. Second category, I guess again we could start with you, Graf. Who's been the biggest, most unsung hero of the season? What's kind of been the most underrated story so far?
All right. Well, this is a 2-part question here. I'm going a little outside the box here. I think the most unsung hero on the team is assistant coach James Borrego, personally. I mean, he's completely transformed the offense. It has been just to see these guys sharing the ball and the assist totals. I mean, just think about what we did the other night, 19 assists and 19 makes. We've never seen that before, but this has been the norm. There have been obviously some rough patches along the way, but as these guys have started to really buy in as the season has gone along, you can see the capability of what really the vision was when James Borrego came in here in the first place as Willie Green's top assistant. So I think he's the most unsung hero in my mind, and the most underrated story. Well, JD kind of touched on it a little bit with that win against Dallas. You know what happened the day before that win against Dallas? The team meeting across the way after the Pelicans had gotten smoked by the Mavericks. CJ McCollum, Larry Nance says, this has to stop. They were in there for about an hour. They came out, and obviously what happened the next day. So they cleared the air. Guys say, we cannot continue to play this way. We just can't do it. It's not acceptable. And, and it's like thinking initiating the meeting was McCollum and Nance. And since that, it's been a completely different team. So I think that's the most underrated story of the year.
See, and I'm in that vein, and I'm going to lump them both together, the unsung hero and underrated story, because I'm going to throw this one not on Coach Borrego, but I'm going to stay on the staff. I'm going to stay with Willie Green. because I think having to assimilate these parts, we've seen Zion Williamson play, we've seen Brandon Ingram play, we've seen C.J. McCollum play. We have not seen them play together this much. And so he had to kind of figure out, okay, what's the system that's going to be the best to get these guys to work together the best. And so, trying to figure that out and having to add in Trey Murphy when he came back and add in, Jose Alvarado when he came back. So trying to kind of, make that gumbo work, has been a pleasant problem, but it's been a problem because, again, we've seen these guys play, but we hadn't seen them play together. And so they had to figure it out on the court too, but the coaching staff has to lead that. The coaching staff has to put guys in positions to score and put guys in positions to be successful. And so I think, and I guess that goes to Coach Borrego too, Coach Green, put those guys together, mash them together, the whole staff. But they had to kind of figure these guys out on the run when they have not had these guys together this much. And so that's why it feels like an ascending product instead of, I think last year, about the same record, but it was headed the other way because you were on the losing streak, Zion was out and that kind of thing. But now it seems like an ascending product.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think for me, I actually had kind of a tie for the most unsung hero for me for the season. Jonas Valanciunas has played in every game, and I feel like over the course of the last couple months, everyone, including the fans, have gained even greater appreciation for how much he means to this team, like how reliable he is, how you can always count on him as somebody that you can get the ball to offensively. His rebounding is so important based on, I think this team has rebounded well over the last couple of years, had some ups and downs in that area this year, so he's super vital in a lot of different ways. And my second unsung hero is Najee Marshall. JD mentioned how the Dallas, 2-game series was kind of a turning point. That was actually when Najee came back. His season debut was the first Dallas game. So, obviously there's a million other factors, but you can kind of trace the turnaround of the season to when Najee made his season debut. Obviously, other guys came in later, Jose Alvarado later in November, Trey at the beginning of December. But I do think that he provides things off the bench, and the energy that he brings is something that, he's not a name player. When you think of the Pelicans, people don't think of Najee Marshall, but I do think that he is somebody that I appreciate for just all of the different intangible stuff that he brings, as well as the fact that he's been an improved three-point shooter this year, which is something that he's been working on since he's been in the league. So,
he's a guy who's kind of made himself invaluable because if you're going to switch everything defensively, which the Pels do, he's got the size and the tenacity to be a guy who you can switch with that way, and he won't back down from people. I think that makes him pretty invaluable from a rotation standpoint.
And for the record, Jonas Valanciunas will never be unsung to me, Jim. That's my guy.
I'm sure he appreciates that. Definitely.
How do you say Iron Man in Lithuanian?
We'll have to ask him that. Next category, there's probably a lot of things that could enter into this, but I guess starting with JD, what's been the biggest surprise of the Pelicans season so far?
Biggest surprise, I think, for me has been, and it's kind of a collective thing, the buy-in, where you've gotten guys to say, you know what, I don't care if I get 28, I just want to win. So you got, we saw in the last game, the most recent game, Zion Williamson scores 13, but he's got 9 assists. Brandon Ingram scores 28, and he's got 10 assists. So you've got guys who are saying, you know what, I don't care if tonight is not going to be the night where I'm going to get my shots or get my points or get my whatever. I'm going to play team ball in order to win the game. And so I think we've seen a decent amount of that this season where, you had Brandon Ingram had a stretch of 7 games where he was below 20 points scoring. And several of those games was because, it was so lopsided in the fourth quarter, he didn't need to score. But I think you get into the NBA and you see guys who are, when guys average 27, 28, they want that 27, 28. And I think this team is saying, we've seen it a billion times with Valanciunas, where a guy who one game he might have 20 and 10, next game he might have, 7 points and 9 rebounds. I don't think it affects these guys. You don't see them pouting about not getting numbers. You see these guys more interested in winning. So the buy-in to me has been really nice with this team, considering, again, that they hadn't played together a lot.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'm going to go with the three-point shooting. Never in my wildest dreams would I have ever imagined that the Pelicans would be top 5 in the NBA in three-point field goal percentage. I mean, it's just and the volume that we're seeing this year. Again, they've been talking about it for, we got to put more threes up. Yeah, that's fine, but also you got to make the threes as well. But now you're seeing both. You're seeing the attempts go up, but you're seeing 18 threes in a game, 19 threes in a game. We go back to the first 2 games on that long road trip. 19 threes in Sacramento, 18 threes against the Golden State Warriors. I mean, we're doing to the Warriors what the Warriors have been doing to us. And then, of course, it culminated 2 nights ago with 25. I mean, that's what Boston does. That's what, all these other teams, Sacramento, that's what we've been watching the last few years. And now you can legitimately say, all right, we are a three-point shooting team, and not only are we getting the volume up, but we're doing it efficiently and effectively with the field goal percentage, which is now, again, 3rd in the league. Would you ever have imagined? Because I never have.
Yeah, that was on my list as well. I had 3 things on my list. 3-point shooting was one of them. The other, so I'm not going to go too in-depth in that, but one of the other ones was, to me, the depth is even better than I expected.
That's a good one.
I thought this team was going to be really deep, but we've had a lot of seasons where we've gone into training camp and said, it's going to be tough to find minutes for everybody, and then a guy or two gets injured, sometimes more than that. Maybe a guy or two is disappointing in terms of maybe a veteran free agent they sign that doesn't pan out. The fact that the last game, Jose Alvarado isn't even in the rotation, that you have so many good players that he's not even in the top 10, to me, that is one of the biggest surprises that I've seen so far. And the other one is the success on the road. So in the 3 times that the Pelicans have made the playoffs since they rebranded as Pelicans, they won 17 road games, and 24. The latter was in 2018. That was a really good season as far as winning on the road. They already have 12 road wins, so they're almost already approaching that 17 mark that got them into the playoffs a couple times before. The fact that they had a 7 or 8 game road winning streak, all of those things to me have been impressive. The fact that they've been able to do as well as they have on the road. So,
and for the record, Jim, I'm still going to die on that hill about the Laker game in Vegas being a road game, because it's not. It's not. It's a neutral court game, and it should be 8 straight road games, because we had not lost one since the Chicago game, but they count that Vegas game as a road game. I'm dying on that hill. The record should be 8. But anyway, that's a technicality, and I digress.
See, Adam Silver, his name is Todd Graffagnini. That's 2 Fs.
Did you notice how I said 7 or 8 too? I covered both. Both ground. It was funny because there was a few times where I tweeted, I was listening to you on the radio, and I heard you say it's an 8-game winning streak, and I was tweeting that was a 7-game winning streak. So, we had to find some middle ground there, but we sorted it out. And
7.5.
Yeah, exactly. So, next category, I want to have some fun here and excuse me, throw out some hot takes. So, the next question is, what is your biggest hot take second half prediction? I guess we'll start with you, JD.
See, I don't even know if this is a hot take right now, but I'm saying that this team, which historically has shot threes like brick masons, will make.
That's my biggest surprise. We'll make 15 threes
in 10 games.
Oh man!
In the last 40 games, I think this team can do that. I mean, they're coming off 20. It don't even feel hot to me now because they made 25 in the last game. Now, we've seen this team also play some games where they made 7, which they did the previous game. But I just feel like there's enough shooting and enough belief and enough trust where these guys are swinging the ball to the open guy, and it doesn't matter who the open guy is, and the open guy is letting fly, and a lot of times the open guy is the right open guy. And so I think they can make 15 threes in 10 games.
Well, just to kind of further that point, JD, I mean, now that when you have a game like that, that we saw against Charlotte, and you make 25, and again, it's never happened in the history of this franchise, but still, you talked about belief and the trust, and now it's almost you add that with confidence, and when guys have confidence, like we have seen, Trey and Hawk and McCollum and now Ingram with the 7 threes the other night. If you've got the confidence to put it up and you believe it's going in, it permeates. It is absolutely something that guys feed off of. And I really can't disagree with what you're saying.
Did we get a hot take out of you, Graff? My
hot take, and I don't think, again, this is a real hot take, but I think we're going to get a top 4. I think we're going to host.
Oh, that's sizzling.
I hope. I mean, not I hope. I think we're going to host a first-round playoff series. I think we're going to really step it up in the second half and get there. We've given some games away, and, we're down 3 in the loss column to those, top 4 teams right now, and those are games that you can't get back. But I think all the things that we've kind of learned in the first half, especially you've got to be able to close games out. I think we're going to learn those lessons and get into the top 4. I'm not going to go so much as far as say 3, but I'll take 4 right now. It'll be against the Clippers, I think. Hot take.
I love it, Graff. I absolutely love it. My hot take is related to Jordan Hawkins, and mine is that by the end of the season, everyone around the league is going to realize that he deserves to be all-rookie first team. Now, here's the problem. Here's the circumstances that he's going up against. He's 12th in minutes among rookies, so he's not getting the same opportunities that a bunch of other guys are, but that's a product of him coming to a good team. A lot of the rookies are on teams that have won 5-8 games. We just saw that the other night with Charlotte. Brandon Miller didn't play in that game, but a guy who gets picked really high goes to a team that's not competitive, not ready to win a bunch of games. So I think that he's going to maybe not have the same counting stats as some of the other guys that play more, but by the end of the regular season, people will say this guy's played, deserves him a spot. I know Wemby's going to be there. I know Jaime Jaquez is going to be there. Chet Holmgren, who's, you could argue whether he's a rookie or not, he'll be there as well. But that's my claim to hot take status. Last category, and I feel like this causes, in terms of the league-wide discussion, this causes brawls. This causes people getting in each other's faces. This causes people screaming at each other on Twitter. But I saw that recently people discussed this on Pelicans Twitter as far as who is the team MVP. So I wanted to...
Speaking of brawling, Pelicans Twitter.
So I wanted to have everyone have their opportunity to make their case of who they think is the team MVP from the first half of the season, starting with you, JD.
Okay, so I didn't want to go with the obvious guys because there are 3 or 4 obvious guys. I went a little less obvious. And my guy is Larry Nance Jr. Larry missed 13 games with the ribs. They're 8-3 since he came back, and so numbers, 9 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 1.6 steals, shooting 64% from the field. But that's never the tale of what Larry Nance is. Graff mentioned earlier the team meeting. That's the contribution stuff that Larry does, and he's a guy who, on the court, I don't know if they grade mental reps and mental mistakes and where you're supposed to be. Larry's got one of the highest basketball IQs that in the league, probably certainly on this team. He's just a guy who does what he's supposed to do when he's supposed to do it, stays within what he does well. And now that he's back to health, now you see the dunks and you see, the athleticism, and you see the, again, a guy who previously, when he was hurt, could get to the right spot but couldn't do anything about it. Now he can get to the right spot and do something about it. And, oh, by the way, he's making a few threes too. So, he's my guy because he's just kind of the glue guy, even though he's on the second unit. But he's a guy who when you need him to, he plays well enough to, even if Jonas Valanciunas is healthy, he finish games for you because he's so smart about what he's doing in terms of finishing games. He's just making the right play all the time. So right now, that's my guy.
I waffled a lot on this one, but ultimately, when it's all said and done at this point in the season, C.J. McCollum is the team MVP. I could make a very good case for Herb Jones just because of what he does defensively, and when he is not on the floor defensively, we see, and look, the Pelicans are, top 6 right now in league in defense, and since the December date. We're second in defensive efficiency. It's been a very underrated defensive team, and I went back last night and looked at some of the scores. Even when the Pels have lost games during this stretch, it's a rare occasion. The Dallas game on Monday was a real outlier. Dallas scored 125 points in that game, and it took two guys scoring 40 to do it for them. But even when the Pels have not been successful as far as not getting wins, they're giving up 110, 112. It's not like they're giving up 130 points in these losses. Yeah. They're much closer. So, again, what Herb brings to the table defensively, I think everybody feeds off of that, especially when he, unfortunately gets into foul trouble sometimes, and then you really have to start switching things early on in the ball game. And when he gives you offense, the Pels are basically unbeatable. So I think that is a big-time case for him being the team MVP. But when it's all said and done, from game number 1 to where we are right now, it's CJ McCollum. And I know he missed some time with the ribs, but he has been he's just been so consistent from the first game on. And his shooting has been as good as it's ever been in his career. And how many times have we said, we got to start quick. We got to start fast. How many times has he come out of the gate and knocked 3 threes down in the first quarter and we're off and running? And then if we're in a little bit of a drought and you need a bucket, the bucket getter gets a bucket. Yeah. And look, he's playing great defense too. He's getting steals. He's blocking shots. His assist totals are off the charts this season. So, again, from as far as the consistency, it's C.J. McCollum for me.
Yeah, by the way, I think it's healthy, the fact that we have multiple answers to this, that there's a bunch of different possibilities of guys that you could mention. And I've noticed recently, too, that in some of the projections that you start to see right around this time of the season for all-star picks, you don't see a lot of Pelicans names mentioned. But to me, I have no problem with that, because to me, if there was a team in the league that individual stuff is out the window right now and it's all about just winning as many games as you possibly can, to me it's the Pelicans. So I think going back to what you said, Graff, about CJ too, he was also my pick.
And I want to correct myself. I think I said ribs. I was thinking of Larry. He had a collapsed lung. Did McCollum? That's why he missed the time. I got the injuries all mixed up.
That's bigger than ribs. Although fractured ribs hurts like a son of a gun.
It's okay, because we all should have like honorary medical degrees from what's happened the last few years. So if you get a body part here or there mixed up, it's totally fine. I do the injury report all the time, and I have to make sure I'm double checking to make sure that I'm good on what I'm listing anatomically. So. But going back to what you said about CJ as far as MVP, he was also my pick. And I'll keep this really simple to what I said about the all-star consideration versus winning and losing. The Pelicans are 19-9 in the games that CJ McCollum has played. And it's kind of easy to forget. They actually got off to a good start the first 5-6 games of the season before he got injured. They were winning at a decent level. He goes out. They hit a skid where they go down to 4-6, and that was right when the Dallas, in the middle of the Dallas series, they were 4-6, and then things turned around from there. But 19-9 when CJ plays. 6 and 8 when he doesn't play. I believe my math is correct on that. And so you just look at that, and you mentioned the consistency. To me, that makes him the MVP so far.
Got another little number too, and I know we got to wrap it up here. That loss in Dallas on Monday, which I'm not going to get over the rest of the year. It's going to be one of those. That's the only loss for the Pelicans this year when CJ scored 20 points or more. Yeah. So we're 13-1. We're 12-1 when he has 20 points. Yeah. I mean, come on.
He's got the mid-range game going. He's got the float game going. He's got everything going right now. And even though the Pelicans have 2 former All-Stars, Zion and Brandon Ingram on this team, it kind of sort of reminds me of that Hawks team a few years back where they had Kyle Korver and Jeff Teague and
Al Horford,
and where none of those guys were stars, but they made the playoffs and they played well together, and
they were 1 seed that year.
Yeah, they were. I mean, because they were hard to beat because you didn't know where it was coming from.
Look, that's a great point, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I went on Antonio Daniels' show, Give and Go on Sirius XM on NBA Radio earlier in the week, and Rick Kamla asked me about the big three for us, Zion, B.I., and CJ, if they were all-star worthy. And I'm like, well, for us they are, but if you look, sheer numbers-wise, no one's going to vote them in.
Yeah.
No, now, they help winning, which is key. But if you're just looking at their raw numbers, you're like, they're not going to make the all-star team. So I really couldn't answer. I wasn't trying to dodge the question, but it was like, if I'm a coach and you got to vote, fans are not going to vote those guys in because they're not averaging 30 points a game. They're averaging 21, 22. And you wouldn't think of that being all-star, but they're not looking at their assist totals, how high they are. They're not looking at what they're doing defensively. So that's just kind of along to your point. Are they all-stars? Yes. To us, absolutely, but maybe not to the league in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to see everyone on this team get as much individual credit as they can. But coming from someone, I think this might have been right before you came in to the mix graph here. I know JD obviously was here. Coming from someone that covered a team that had, I think, 2 starters in the All-Star game but didn't make the playoffs that year, I think they might have finished 9th or 10th. To me, I would trade as many All-Star selections. I would trade an All-Star selection for 1 seed higher in the playoffs because, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's all about team success. And as JD referenced earlier, I think everyone has bought into that idea as well. I think ultimately too, you have guys at the top of the roster that have gotten a lot of credit for what they've done, but they're not going to reach that level of some of the other guys in the league in terms of how much respect they get until they're in the playoffs every year. They're going deep in the playoffs, like a team like Boston that goes, to the conference finals. So I think, your stats might go down, and you might not have as good of a chance to make All-Star as you did in previous years, but the long-term payoff of the team being successful, I think, is what we need to focus on, and that's what's going to pay off for all these guys, for every single player on this roster. So
I think these guys are just tired of talking about it. I think they're tired of talking about it, and now you stop talking about it. Either you got to be about it or shut up, because people are tired of hearing about potential, and I think they're tired of talking about their potential. Now you just got to do it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed this very much with you guys. This is something that we're going to do every couple weeks, so we'll be tracking you guys down over the course of the season. So that wraps up the first edition of the Pelicans Radio Roundtable for this season. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, our thanks to Todd Graffagnini and John DeShazier. We're going to get Aaron Summers here as well, and the rest of the broadcast crews here. We've already had AD. We've had
Joel Myers.
We've had David Wesley.
Aaron Hardigan.
So we can continue to do
cast
that
of
here
thousands.
Well.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that. All right, it's time for our Friday. What are we doing again?
We're doing trending number.
Trending numbers.
Mm-hmm. And actually, you mentioned earlier in the show about, you're a little hesitant to give me more work than I already have, but you know what? Not only do I have 1 trending number for you, I have 2. So I went above and beyond this week. The first trending number is 3, and that is the Pelicans' rank in 3-point percentage among all NBA teams over the course of the season. Graf touched on this during the roundtable, but I think it bears it makes sense to reemphasize this. If you think about the fact that the Pelicans were considered a team that didn't maybe have even kind of average shooting, 3-point shooting going into the season, the fact that they're in the top 3, what a huge boost. If they can stay even in the top 10, I think in percentage over the course of the season, with the added volume that guys like Jordan Hawkins and Trey Murphy, now that he's been back since December, can add, I think that it's going to make them even more potent offensively. Maybe you'll see them move into the top 6 or 8 in the offensive rankings. I think the last time I checked, they were 12th in offense. We know that they can, keep climbing in that stat as well. Mm-hmm. And then the second trending number is related to Jordan Hawkins. The trending number is 2, and that is he ranks among all players in the NBA. He's second in 3-point percentage in the month of January. Now, I cut the minimum off at you have to have made at least 20, because I don't want to have anyone in there who's 3 for 6 or whatever. But among players across the NBA who've made at least 23 pointers in January, Hawkins is second in three-point percentage. Grayson Allen of Phoenix actually coincidentally is number 1 in that stat in January. So those two guys will be on the court tonight. But just a testament to how hot that guy has been from three-point range. One other thing, too, I'll quickly throw in. Herb Jones has not made 20 threes in January, so he kind of just missed the cutoff. But he's actually shot 60% from three in January, so he has an even higher percentage than Hawk does, but just in a lot lower, a little bit less volume over the course of the first few weeks of this month. So,
all right, looking for that. I asked for a number. You gave me like a whole
list of them.
I love that. But look, the reason I'm glad you're doing that too is it helps people, I think, understand the perspectives and what we're doing, because those numbers are looked at by coaches. Those numbers are looked at by opponents when you do the scouting report. You keep hearing CJ and them talk a lot about it, and that's what I love about listening to them in post-game. You really hear how much work they're actually putting in there. They're not just running out there on the court and like, hey, throw to me the ball, I'm open. When you hear CJ, when you heard Hawkins talk about why those threes made, they were being very specific, and they gave names to a lot of different aspects of it. I thought they were talking about Tom Brady. When Hawkins was talking about Brady.
I don't know what the story is.
Well, Christian Clark asked him what it was. A specific just area where you're going on the court. But that's my point. And look, I hate to always use the analogy, but I'm in the building, right? When Sean Payton was here, he was very meticulous and specific as to what foot you put into the ground on an out route, on an in, where you're going. If it's a 10-yard on step 8, the left foot goes down. Step 9 is your cut. You're out of your plant on 10. Very specific and reasoned and purposeful. And when I listen to this Pels team talk, there's very real purpose as to where they're going. And we've talked a lot about maybe, is that something that James Borrego brought in with this offense? Because you always hear about spacing, and fans hear that. What does it mean? How do I get more space? And I'm almost being educated as to how to create space in something that doesn't ever move. It's always a constant, right? It's always the width of the court. So how I move and manipulate players away from areas, bring players with me to areas, then create space on it. And I love hearing that. Like Jordan Hawkins saying, there's a reason. We will go start towards the elbow, and then we already know where somebody is going to be. It's just, in other words, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, there's no just, you know what you're doing on the court. You know where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that there's a comfort level of, okay, ball comes up the court, I'm going to go do this. Well, if I just saw Jim go there, then I'm going to go there and I'm ready. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes it easier for you, because then you're just kind of going over what you're doing in the game, and it's putting you in a spot that you should succeed in.
And you mentioned having specific things, not having it be like a general thing of like, we're going to try to do some of this and some of that. I think one specific target that they've had is to increase their three-point volume. And I mentioned percentages, but people can say, like, yeah, their percentages might not be great, but ultimately they need to not have as many games where they're only taking 23 pointers. Another stat, this wasn't in the trending number list, but I'll add it to the pile. Pelicans are 5th in January in three-point makes per game with 15 a game. So it's not just that they're shooting threes at a good percentage. It's the fact that the way this offense has created space, like you mentioned, and some of the things that James Borrego has implemented, they're now at the point where they're much closer to the kind of volume and the kind of threat that they want to be as a three-point attack.
All right, it's Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com, Jim_Eichenhofer, the way to follow over on X, and of course, Pelicans.com. He's got to go get the shoot around. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Gus.
And thank you as always. And don't forget, all you have to do is go ahead and click follow the show, and every time a new Pelicans podcast drops down, boom, it will notify you, and you can check it out. So, again, thank you for tuning us in. We'll see you again on Monday. Let's go, Pels.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcast. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.